Rachel, welcome to the ExchangeWire kitchen.
Thank you for having me.
No, I'm delighted to welcome you on this kind of changeable May day in London.
Very much. I thought we were through the worst of it, but we're not.
No, thunderstorms ahead. Well, we're going to chat about CTV,
Yes.
but first, the all-important question: what coffee have you chosen?
I've gone latte. I'm always a latte girl. I never used to drink coffee, and then I started working in an office, and my mum was like, "Probably need to. If you're making tea rounds, you need to drink coffee." So I'm a milky. Always got to have milk in it.
Yep.
And now I do love coffee, but it took me a while to get there.
Fair enough. I can imagine. Who'd have thought that you'd end up in an interview based entirely around the concept of having a coffee?
Look how far I've come.
There we go. Well, I'm really pleased that you have. I'm on my traditional afternoon flat white today.
Very nice.
Good, nice milky afternoon coffee. Before we get into CTV and the landscape, the entire ecosystem, tell me a little bit about yourself, your role at WPP and what you're up to.
Yeah, I am a business director at WPP Media. So we're now in it's called MM&D, Media Management and Delivery team. So I have always been in AV, with reservation AV. So we do everything from kind of AV strategy, planning, buying, all the way through to reporting, measurement, all of that kind of thing. So I oversee that for a patch of clients. I'm sure we'll get into some of the detail of them later, but everything, the full sweep. If it involves AV, then it's us.
Amazing. So, on that note,
Yes.
CTV.
Yeah.
Where are we at with CTV in the agency ecosystem, in buying
Yeah.
the works?
I mean, what a big question.
Yeah.
I think it also depends how we define CTV, because it's sort of, I know we've spoken about this before, but the lines are very blurry. As a viewer, you just call everything TV, right? You go home in the evening and you watch TV. You don't specifically say you've been watching SVOD, AVOD, blah, blah, blah. But we look at that as advertisers. In advertising, we kind of look at, do we need to be around BVOD and linear TV and how those things all ladder up? So I think CTV to me is a kind of very broad umbrella term for, it encapsulates so many things. Which I think is kind of the crux of why it's so interesting, but also why it's quite difficult, because there are just so many elements kind of working together or against each other, and all of that kind of thing. Maybe the market hasn't quite kept up with the way we need to look at it, measure it, trade it, all of that kind of thing. I think CTV to me is just basically, you don't think you can even buy a television anymore that isn't internet ready. So it's basically everything except for the linear TV chunk. I think in my head, broadly, it covers everything else. I'm sure there are kind of specifics within that in terms of, AVOD, BVOD, SVOD. There's fast channels, there's connected TV apps that you can turn on the TV and there's an advert at the top and you can buy that separately. So it's a huge ecosystem, incredibly interesting, but very difficult, I think, for agencies to kind of navigate and then to tell clients about. Again, is kind of another step, because we have to get out of kind of ad head and go into viewer mode and think, okay, well, we need to follow people's eyeballs wherever they are. The way that we are set up doesn't necessarily facilitate that being the easiest thing ever.
Yep.
But we're getting there, definitely.
Yeah. Have we overcomplicated it slightly? Like you said, from the ad head point of view, from the agency point of view, we do talk about all these different channels and platforms in CTV, the ecosystem. Do we just need to start calling it TV? Or we've reached that point yet? Or is it still useful to have these definitions?
I think the good part about them is that it does help us understand it. If we just broadly call everything TV now, at the point we're at, how do we navigate that complexity if we're just bundling it all together? And I think it's kind of got to that point, because I remember, showing my age, I remember when BVOD first became a thing that we were like, wow, we really need to be jumping on this. So that made sense. And then it's just over time, more and more things have been added separately. Then we got AVOD, then we got SVOD that now has ad tiers, and then fast channels and all of this extra kind of stuff. So it's kind of happened in a really organic way. It's just coming to a point probably quite soon where we do need to kind of step back and go, okay, there are all of these options now. We do need to navigate it differently from how historically we've kind of added one by one. That's not to say there isn't a load of value in each, but they will be stronger together.
Yeah, there's a more kind of complete
Yes.
CTV
Yeah.
mix. What's the strength of CTV as part of the AV package? Is that, in the omnichannel mix, where do you see CTV as sitting?
I mean, if we're kind of thinking about it as more fundamentally just TV, and we kind of bundle linear into that, maybe we don't. I don't think there's necessarily a kind of right answer or a silver bullet to where CTV kind of sits and fits into everything. But I think there's always going to be value in TV in whatever way we look at that. Yeah. Linear TV, okay, yes, might be kind of becoming less important as viewing drops for younger audiences, and that kind of trend that we've been seeing and since before COVID, and it's kind of more and more pronounced over time. But the fundamentals of TV are still very much there. It is still really trustworthy. People see it as kind of more premium. All of those kind of the multiplier effects of everything else works harder when your TV is live. That is very much true of kind of the holistic view of TV. Yeah. So there will always be a space for it. It's just pulling out the bits under the TV umbrella that are most useful for different clients, different briefs. If we want to go younger, okay, maybe linear TV isn't the answer or the whole answer. I don't think it would be the whole answer for most clients, but there will be certain things we can lean in. Does the market move to being more addressable? Is that the answer? Or probably, but some brands still want to be kind of big and showy and famous. So maybe, again, it's not the whole. It's a very muddy market.
It is, yeah, and it's fascinating because of that. Because there's so many, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you go about these discussions on the TV sell and what clients really want to know. Whether it is that, like, how many eyeballs are going to be on the screen? Are we going to make it like, are we buying a Super Bowl ad? That kind of, that kind of scale that they want. Yeah. Like, how do you navigate that in those discussions?
I think it's very much kind of us and clients together. So where I work takes a consultative approach. So rather than kind of us going to a client with a recommendation, we try and work together with them and bring them on that journey with us, because it is really complicated. And we've got some clients that are a bit more wed to kind of TV in a traditional sense of, they want to see themselves in Britain's Got Talent or I'm a Celeb or Gogglebox and tell the office that it's on a Friday night and they can all tune in. There are still clients that want that and they want to hit certain weekly weights, and that level of reach that you get from linear TV is enough for them to measure against. Other clients, I think especially moving forward as kind of budgets are under more scrutiny, are asking for more and more measurement off the back of things, and that is not really something linear TV has ever lent itself to, and especially as digital channels more broadly progress, those channels that can't do brand lift studies or the kind of pointy end of action or even conversion, or at least we don't have a really solid way of measuring it outside of things like Adelyzer and that kind of TV analytics. That can kind of dilute how hard TV can work in some clients' minds, I think, because they are so bound by there have to be proven results. But then, you can do econometrics and TV will come out one of the best channels every time. So there's always this kind of dichotomy of you kind of need it, but maybe to a lesser extent than we would have relied on it 5-10 years ago. Yeah,
that's, I imagine, a tricky question to broach is the outcomes. Is, client, like you say, tricky times, every cent, every pound, penny is accounted for, and they want to know, okay, so who did this reach? Where, on that, do we need better industry standardisation across CTV? Do we need frameworks to help prove this measurement?
Yeah. I think it's what one of the biggest topics of conversation, I think, on a daily basis at conferences, all of that kind of thing. And there's things in place. We've got C-Flight originally, which gives us kind of TV and the BVOD reach. But that's kind of it in that parcel. And then Project Origin, but that's not moved forward to the place that it's not usable yet for a lot of advertisers, because it's still only doing kind of TV and Meta. And YouTube, so whichever, there's lots of kind of solutions, but none of them are the answer. None of them cover everything. We've got kind of other studies that can do addressable in TV, but it misses out BVOD. So I think everybody knows that there needs to be an answer, but obviously now the market it's so prolific that it will be incredibly difficult to get all of those people on the same page, which is why Origin, I think, took a long time and has slowed, is what makes one channel look really good makes another channel look really poor. And nobody wants to sign up to that.
No.
He's absolutely throwing it down.
I know.
So, yeah, I think obviously that would be ideal, and that would be what everybody would want. And what clients are asking, how is there like a proxy way to get there, or is there a tool we can build? And now with the influx of AI, is there a way around it? But again, it's what they're looking for. If we don't have something that can do reach and frequency across every single channel under CTV, then maybe that's okay if there's something else we can do. And I think that's where we try and look at it. If we've got a client that's really put a lot of onus on outcomes, actually reach and frequency isn't really an outcome. That doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. Like, great, you've reached 15 million people, but have those people, did they like your ad? Do they remember it? Have they gone on and Googled it? Or all of those, or pointy bits, have they gone on to buy something, told their friend, recommended it? Those are the things I think where, because that exists for clients in digital spaces, that it seems to be shifting, is that is now being asked for from a connected TV space, which is the power of connected TV, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's bringing those, the expectations from digital into the new version of TV.
Yeah,
basically.
Which comes with its own issue of, fundamentally, is it the right channel to be doing lower funnel actions? Yes, you can measure it, but if that's not why it's on the plan, then is it fair to put it against another channel that is, display would work a lot harder at click-through rate and blah, blah, all of that kind of thing. If connected TV is sitting on there, that's not really its job. It could be, but on a lot of plans it's not. So then it's kind of, it's tricky to navigate for sure.
Yeah, definitely. On that note though, what's it good for, basically? Where does CTV have the best impact, do you think? What does it work especially well with?
I would say for us, a lot of the time it's an awareness driver. Yeah. So like we've said, where the kind of gravitas of linear TV has maybe slipped back a little, CTV, and also there are so many more options with CTV in terms of targeting, data overlays that we can use that are kind of get to really crunchy audiences. There can be so much value in that, rather than spending however much on a kind of broader campaign and hoping that we haven't wasted too many of those impacts on people that aren't interested in whatever we're selling. There's a real benefit to that layer. So it's sort of awareness, but very targeted, is a really good place for us to use it. We try and link everything together. So where we've got kind of an awareness channel in CTV, can it start to impact, and can we measure and kind of flow through it with a client, how it then impacts consideration? Because if people aren't aware of it, then they're not going to consider it, and then they're not going to purchase it. So it's kind of, I guess, wrong to look at it as a silo. I think that's the whole point as we kind of move forward, and as we've kind of done over the last few years, is, we shouldn't be looking at TV and then BVOD, and then we moved on, and we shouldn't be looking at online video without display. That everything on a whole media plan works together, and they all, the end goal is purchase or action, but they all have their own role in the funnel. And I think we try and set it up from the beginning of, this might not be doing the lower funnel, but can we prove that it is directly impacting things further down?
Yeah, which is a super useful way of looking at it, really.
Yes.
When you're consuming TV, when you're watching, what impresses you about ads that you see, and what would you like to see more of, do you think, in how CTV ads develop?
I think it's kind of, you always have to put yourself as the viewer, right, outside of advertising. So I got a new television the other day. My mum then got another one because she was so impressed. But the Amazon ads all have a add to basket button, or it can send you a push notification, or there's a QR code. And it's so easy now to interact with it, find out more, put it straight in your box. TV has never had that power before to instantly interact. That you had to take your eyes away from the screen and Google it, and then the TV's come back on, and then you're like, what was I Googling? So I think that is a really interesting area. I know when we first tested QR codes over COVID, I think it was ITVX were first kind of building them onto creative, but it was really new for people on TV. It was like, oh, I don't have time to get my phone out and scan the QR code. And it was a bit kind of, it was like, what is that? Where, they'd kind of come and then disappeared, and then they were all over menus when there was a pandemic and people suddenly knew what to do with them again. But that, it has taken a little while, but now having that literally at your fingertips, I think can be so valuable, even if it's, even if they add it to the basket, but they don't then go on to purchase, or it sits in the basket. We can get all of that data.
Amazing.
So there's definitely kind of value in it becoming an actionable channel. And if that then broadened out across more of the connected TV space, then I think that would only be a good thing. And then it would be much more second nature for everybody. So we're not all surprised when you can literally press a button and add it to your basket, or it sends you an email. That, I think, will become a lot more normal.
Yeah, it's funny, that's the exact example I have in my head, the Amazon, flashed up an advert on Prime. It was for some washing product, and I was like, I'm going to test this. So I clicked to my basket, checked my Amazon, and oh wow, it works. This is, Amazon ecosystem's quite special because it has the whole retail arm and it works together so nicely. That's probably a different conversation.
Yeah.
And so is the bridge of CTV and retail media, which we will discuss another time as well. But no, one thing that's fascinated me about CTV is the possibilities of how ads work. And I think that's a really interesting case in point. So I'd like to see more innovation along those lines, I think.
Yeah, I think we went through a real boom of kind of formats. Probably a good few years ago now, there were more kind of interactive formats on VVOD, and now as they're consumed more as a lean back actually on a TV, less desktop and mobile, I think some of those have slipped away. I do still really like the ad pause ones that you get. I think especially when people kind of build it into the copy, I think those are really nice. Because I do pause, because sometimes you don't get adverts anymore, so I have to pause because otherwise I can't put the kettle on.
Exactly.
So I think there are some really nice ideas, but it's just kind of, I think it'll be really interesting to see probably what people come up with next.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on it closely, and I will have you back to the coffee table to discuss when it happens. Rachel, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And we will, we'll do it again sometime.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.